So this is my spoiler-free review of Dune. I figured I'd do a review of this book for two reasons. One, because I kind of have like new interest in the book, and I think a lot of people do because of the new movie that's coming out. And two, because it's one of my favorite books of all time. Dune was written by Frank Herbert, and it was published in 1965, and it holds the title of the best-selling science fiction novel of all time, which is pretty impressive. And to this date, I checked before I made this video, it still holds that record. Dune is one of the most beloved and revered books that has ever been written. And I feel the same way as millions of others do. I absolutely love this book. It's one of my favorite novels. Part of what made this book so interesting was like it deep dives into some very heavy philosophical questions. And it's almost like the science fiction story is just used as a backdrop to discuss things about politics relationship to religion, and what that has to do with the environment and corruption and society and all kinds of really big think type concepts, but they're put against the backdrop of a sci-fi political adventure story. So the plot mostly centers around a young boy named Paul. He's a teenager coming of age in one of the noble houses, and his house is given charge of a planet informally referred to as Dune. Formally in the book, it's called Arrakis. I might be butchering that pronunciation as well. And this planet is what produces this spice, this drug that the universe is obsessed with. And this drug is a massive commodity in the universe, and it also grants some degree of like supernatural mental enhancing abilities to people that take it. It's also highly addictive. I don't want to say too much more because that would be kind of ruining the plot, but basically you're following Paul as he navigates a whole bunch of corruption and is trying to survive on this desert planet and amongst all the religious clashings and different viewpoints and the political corruption that's going on. So, like I said right at the beginning of this review, I love this book. If you're a fan of like hard-boiled science fiction and world building where there's different languages and vocabularies and rules, you're gonna love this book. I first tried to read this book in high school and I had a really hard time with it because there's so many words that get thrown at you right out of the gate, like right in page one, that the author doesn't take the time to define like all kinds of technical terms, which is part of why I was saying earlier I might even be butchering some of the pronunciations because he makes up a lot of words in this. At the same time, I do really appreciate that because you get the idea and the feeling that this world is massive, that it's very, very big right from the get-go. So I picked up the book a little bit later when I was in college, and I started to read it again, and I enjoyed it immensely. And it's funny because the thing that first turned me off to the book when I first tried to read it is what excited me when I read it later in life, was all of the vocabulary and all of the intricate details that the author put into building this world. There are no details, there's nothing he didn't think of in this book. There's specific rules, there's specific guidelines, the cultures, the religions, the political viewpoints are all very, very fleshed out. You feel like this is an actual place, and you feel like when you're reading it that this actually did happen somewhere because of how thoroughly detailed everything is. This book is not like an afternoon or summer read. It's not an escapism book. You really have to pay attention to what you're reading. Because there's so many intricate details, there's things you can't miss. What's very impressive as you read it is how all these details kind of interconnect and weave and influence the plot as you're moving through it. If you miss something, I found that if you miss like certain pages or certain plot points, it's like very quick. You're kind of lost a few pages later, and I had to go back. But if you sit down in a quiet place and you really read this book for what it is mesmerizing. You get completely absorbed in this detailed world. Reading Dune, you can really see how this book has inspired so much science fiction. You wouldn't really have modern science fiction like Star Wars without Dune. As you're reading it, you're going to see like things that other science fiction books and writers and movies like took from Dune. It's very obvious. The technology, the culture, and some of the ideas. The main character, Paul, he's very easy to relate to because it's a coming-of-age novel about him having leadership and greatness thrust upon him after tragedy. Ultimately, this Dune is about this boy trying to like grow up and become a leader in this world where there's full of power struggles and corruption, and how he navigates that and how he learns different abilities and how he's mentored by different warriors and stuff like this, and how he navigates all the philosophies that are clashing and how he comes through it in the other end. And I really personally identified that when I was younger, when I read this book, and it completely absorbed me. This book blew my mind. It's easily one of my favorite books. It's easily in the top 5 books that I've ever read. So I really recommend that you read this book before you go see the movie. And I put a link if you want to buy it on Amazon below. I do get a little commission on that. It does help me and help support the channel. So I hope you enjoyed this review. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.